Welcome to Mr. Holloway's Foundational Java Skills series. In this video, we're going to talk about nested for loops. But before we get started, please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. And class is now in session. All right, nested for loops. Let's come over here first into the presentation. So a nested for loop is simply a for loop within a for loop. So this is a for loop within a for loop. And so here we have an outer for loop, and that is the items in green. So this is part of the outer for loop, okay, and as well as this. And this is the inner for loop. So the inner for loop, they do the exact same thing, but this is in yellow, and I'm going to show you some of the things that you can do with the nested for loop. So in general, there are several things you can do, but when you look at formations such as these right here, these are the sorts of things that you can do with nested for loops. They're used to loop through two-dimensional arrays, which I'm going to talk about. I do have a video on that, and I'll put that link in the comments as well. But nested for loops are really useful but they're for a very specific situation. All right, so coming back here, so we're gonna create a nested for loop, and let's look at it, what it looks like in code. Okay, so for the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a for loop, right? The for loop skeleton, and this is going to be my outer for loop. Okay, and for good measure, I'm going to create the inner for loop. So we're just creating the skeleton so that we can see the boundaries of each for loop. Okay, so you can see this. So lines 6, 7, and 13 are the outer for loop. This is the inner for loop. So if I were to just cut that away, that would be the inner for loop, or the outer for loop. All right, so I'm going to do a Control-Z and put that back, and I'm going to create the first condition. So I'm going to say int. We're going to create a column, and I'm going to set that initial value to 1, and then I'm going to say as long as call is less than or equal to, we'll make it 7. All right, so you're going to continue to do that as long as call is less than or equal to 7, and then I'm going to do call plus plus. All right, so I have my first for loop ready to go. Now within the inner for loop, I'm going to go ahead and create the code up here as well, but in here is the do something. So this is what we're going to, this is kind of like the meat of this particular for loop. All right, so I need to make this a row. Sorry about that. This should be row, and you'll see in a second. So this should be the row, and this is going to be row. All right, so we're going to look at, so once our final product is going to be rows and columns. So this is where I'm going to do my call. I'm going to set that value to 1, and then we'll just do a 7 by 7, and you'll see that in a second. So as long as call is less than 7, less than and equal to 7, and then we'll do call plus plus. And to do something we're going to do is simply, I'm going to just take, all we're going to do is just print this nice little pattern out. All right, so let's see what happens here. Let's see if we can get the nice little pattern. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to click run, and we're going to try to get a 7 by 7 pattern with these. And if you look over here, this is not what we want. So there's a couple things we need to do, and then we'll kind of go through and walk back and show how this all works. So I need to get to the outer for loop, and I need to put some code here. Okay, because what's happening is that it runs this once, and then it runs this 7 times, and then it exits and then runs it again, and then it runs this, and then it comes out and runs this again. And we're gonna, and actually I'm gonna go through, I'll show you how that works in a second, but I think this would be a better example. So I'm going to say system.out.println, and I'm just going to leave that blank. Okay, so what this is going to do is going to basically give us our nice little rows here. All right. So now we'll be able to see each row. All right, so this is the pattern. And notice that it prints out, so 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's the way the code executes. It executes like this, and then it skips down. Now, what is responsible for getting this second line is this print ln. This is the line that pushes this, where we actually get these nice little carriage returns. All right, now watch this. I'm going to go ahead and just comment that out, and then let's watch what happens. And you see that goes away. All right, so let me bring that back. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to jump into Python Tutor. And if you don't know what Python Tutor is, it's a website that basically is a really good visualizer for looking at how code executes. And so this is a really good example. So let's go into Python Tutor, and I have the exact same code here. And with Python Tutor, you can select, you can use C++, JavaScript, Python, obviously, and different versions of Python as well. All right, so I have the exact same code, so there's nothing that's changed here. We're going to visualize this execution. We're going to look at how the nested for loop operates. All right, so notice here there's 184 steps of code that's going to happen here. All right, so the nested for loop will always begin with the, in this case, it always begins with the outer for loop. So this is going to run once, okay? And then it's going to go down here, and this is going to run through its whole cycle. So it's going to be 7 times. And then it's going to exit out and then run again. And it's going to do that until this condition is not true. So let's follow the steps. All right, so now it is established that we have a variable called row, and it's set to 1. We're going to keep going. Now it comes down, notice it comes down to the nested for loop. And so it executes this code. And so here we have the code that's already run. What? Wait a minute. Let me come back here because I think I skipped ahead too much. All right, so let's start over here. All right, so we have the nested for loop. I should go to next. Okay, so now it executes here. So we're at step 3, and it goes to step 27. Interesting. I think this is probably because it just executed this, and maybe Python Tutor's not able to show this part here, executing one by one. But what it did was it executed this 7 times. So we get print, 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 print. And so this is kind of going, and then it comes back out. All right, so I think the next thing that's going to happen is we're just going to do the exact same thing. So let's go on. So I'm going to click next, step 29. So now it's in the inner for loop. Yeah, and as I'm starting to look at this, it doesn't pick up the call variable, which is interesting. All right, maybe that's just a limitation of this program. Either way, call is it should be at 1 now, or 2. Okay, and if we go ahead and go forward, it prints this out. Okay, and notice it comes back out. So it's finished this loop again. It's coming back out, and it's now on line 6. So we're at step 53, and we're going to execute again. And then this is executed. So this is where we get this row. And I'm just going to keep going. So let's just watch as I go really fast, right? And if you can watch the red arrow as it's just executing, and you notice I'm going to come back. We can go forward, and we can see how this is executed. Once this is no longer true, this will no longer run. All right. So yes. So that is a nested for loop, and this demonstrates how it's run. Now, I wasn't aware of this limitation with the nested for loop, but I don't see a this is interesting. I guess you learn something new every day. All right, either way, this demonstrates how this is executed. Now, I could take this out. This for loop executes the exact same way as this for loop. All right, so these are the same things. The limitation with this program is that it doesn't show you the step, this part right here, where it's not actually, it's actually running this part right here where it would show the call variable. Right now we're only able to look at the row variable. And so if you notice, row is 6, and if we keep going, now it's 7. So now this should keep executing as long as row is less than or equal to 7. And we're it's going to go through this really fast. And now row is 8, and this is no longer true, so the whole thing stops. All right. So coming back to our code, this is the standard nested for loop. And let's go back into the presentation. In a nested for loop, we have an outer for loop and an inner for loop. And that's pretty much the basics of a nested for loop. And we can do pretty things like this, but we can also loop through two-dimensional arrays, which I will show at some point, okay, in another video. All right, so thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Class is now dismissed.